They can head down into the youth center. If you've got one younger than 2, you're welcome to take them to the nursery as well, which is just down the hall in the children's wing. Good morning. That was the most tepid good morning I've heard all day. And I got up at 5:30. Good morning. I want to remind you guys, make sure if you're looking for something to do tonight, come out to Dewey. Let's sing together. Let's do this area-wide singing. Bring something to share, some food item that you enjoy. It's always fun doing the potluck, catching up with our friends from around the community, singing and worshiping together. I hope that you'll do that. We got all kinds of stuff going on. You can check the focus for that. Jody, I appreciated and enjoyed your communion thoughts. Did you say that you guys dissected a hot dog? I got bad news, bud. That was lunch. It was not science class. I don't know where you thought you were. When my kids were born, I decided that I was going to do something special with them about the time they hit puberty. I was in youth ministry for a long time. I love adolescent development. I did a ton of research in college and afterwards about adolescent psychology and development. It's the time of life that I always looked forward to. Like some of you love the baby stage. They're so cute and sweet. And some of you love the little kid stage. I don't know if anybody likes the 7 to 10 stage, but maybe you do. Maybe that person exists when they're just gross all the time. I was looking forward to the teenage stage. I love junior high students, I love high school students, and I love the way that their life changes. So for me, I decided when Kai was born, I would take every one of my kids on some kind of a coming-of-age trip when they turned 12. A way to kind of plant a flag and say, life is changing, and here's what you can expect. Let me pass on wisdom and knowledge about what's coming to you. And so Kai turned 12 right in the middle of 2020, which meant that everything was shut down, and all the fun plans that he wanted to do, we couldn't, so we drove up north of Chicago and camped for a few days and made special memories. And as we went, I had him read a book about adolescent development and the things that were coming down the pike. And then we would discuss it for hours and hours in the car. Well, the rule was supposed to be like 5 hours max, and then, of course, COVID screwed that up, and we went to Chicago. So then when Ashlyn came around, she decided that, well, I guess the sky's the limit. She said, well, Dad, I want to go shark diving. I don't want to go shark diving. There's sharks out there. But I kind of set the expectation, so we went. And there is no better illustration of adolescent development than shark diving. Just throw a kid in the water and say, best of luck, they say you'll be fine. And we had the conversations, and we spent the time together on the plane and in the car rides around Miami. It was exactly what I hoped it would be as far as the information that I got to transfer. But what I realized, what I've experienced in the interim time between when Kai was born 15 years ago, and then when I got to start having these conversations 3 years ago and now with Ashlyn this year, and the twins are coming up next year, is that I can tell them the way that their brains change. I can tell them what's coming for them in their development. That I have a handle on still because we don't really change all that much, human beings. But I thought part of what I would be doing would be preparing them for the world that they were moving into. And I don't know about you, but I feel less and less equipped to do that effectively. If you're a parent in here, and it's Teacher Appreciation Sunday, so I think I'm talking to you too, teachers. I bet that you've felt this. It doesn't feel like, or it feels to me like there's no way for me to really tell my kids, here's what you need to do to prepare for the world you're entering into. Do you know this feeling, parents? Like, for a lot of you, when you were raising your kids, let's say if you're a generation or two older than me, if you're a baby boomer, when you were a kid, your parents could say, do one of two things. Either learn a trade or go to college, and then you'll get a job, and that job will provide for you and your family. You'll get married, you'll raise these kids together, and you kind of had an expectation of the way the world would work out. Someday maybe you'll retire and just you find a company, you stick with that career, and they'll take care of you. For my generation, it was a little different. It was, okay, the labor jobs aren't going to do so much, so now, if you're my age, you need to go to college and to get a degree, and then that degree will allow you to work for a company, probably not the same one for 40 years, that doesn't really happen anymore, but you can work your way up the corporate ladder if you work hard and dedicate yourself, save some money, someday you'll retire. What do we tell our kids? I'm not saying anything to you I haven't said to my son Kai already. I don't know how to prepare you for what happens when you get out of high school. Do you go to college? Maybe. For what career that AI won't somehow impact or possibly take away? Perhaps you should get a trade. Be sure to find one that AI won't mess with. It'd be great to start a family. The average age of people getting married when I was in college was like in your mid-20s. Now it's your early 30s. I don't know if that's such a great path, but how do I help you navigate the way the culture has changed? Everything about the world around us right now, the economy, the culture, it's all changing, isn't it? Not if you feel this. I'm at least trying to be honest with my kids to say, I don't know what to tell you. The path is different now than it was then. It has always been changing, or at least for our lifetimes, but it's changing more rapidly. And if you're in the business, in the situation of life, in the season where your goal is to help other people learn and grow and become something, we're in a really hard place to try to figure out how to do that well. And so my family, for the last month or so, has been reading Proverbs together. I didn't tell Riker to read from Proverbs 3 this morning, but it worked out great. Open your Bible to Proverbs chapter 3 on page 513. I'm just going to read 10 verses of this. Proverbs is written from the perspective of a dad, a middle-aged dad, who happens to be a king, writing or telling the wisdom to his son. My son, pay attention to your parents' instruction. This is how you learn and grow in this world we live in. I'm just going to read the first 10 verses of Proverbs 3. My child, never forget the things I've taught you. Store my commands in your heart. If you do this, you will live many years and your life will be satisfying. What assuredness this guy has. Never let loyalty and kindness leave you. Tie them around your neck as a reminder. Write them deep within your heart. Then you'll find favor with both God and people. You will earn a good reputation. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Instead, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Then you will have healing for your body and strength for your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the best part of everything you produce. Then he will fill your barns with grain, and your vats will overflow with good wine. This is just a small sample of what the entire book of Proverbs is like. So in my desperation, realizing I don't know how to tell my kids this is what life will look like for you, instead what I have done is just say, let's go back to some ancient wisdom. What I love about Proverbs, when we read it, we'll talk about it as a family. Say, everybody be listening for something, some word of wisdom that sticks out to you. And oftentimes what my kids pull out is the real practical advice, just the practical life wisdom. Things like this: whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. This is how you choose your friends and why it matters. Or Proverbs talks a lot about the value of hard work and discipline. Like this: whoever works his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense. And Proverbs teaches practical things about the power of our words, like a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. It teaches about relationships above all else. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. It even teaches a lot about how money works, where it says things like wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. And Proverbs is full of these wise sayings, just basic little life applications about how the world actually works. It's an information dump from the brain of a successful person into his kid's head. And that's helpful. But often, what strikes our family, what my kids have been gravitating to, aren't the things that are just like, here, do this, and this will happen. Instead, they gravitate to passages like this. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. Which way should you point your life? Solomon says, in a consistent, ethical direction. Or lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. Why do you tell the truth? It's one thing to say you should. It's another thing to understand why. And Solomon says, because the Lord delights in it, And if the Lord delights in it, then things will go well for you. Or better is a little with righteousness than great revenue with injustice. Is money the most important thing? Solomon says, not if that's the end goal. Not if it comes at the expense of the poor and the powerless. Have other people in mind when you succeed in business and gain wealth. Or whoever pursues righteousness and love finds life, prosperity, and honor. It's righteousness and love that are the pursuit. Life and prosperity and honor, these are the things you pick up along the journey. Or this one, a person's pride will humble him, but a humble spirit will gain honor. Don't think too much of yourself, Solomon says. Have humility on this journey. See, the things that my kids gravitate to are often not the simple teachings of wisdom. Here's what you should do. Instead, what we're drawn to is the things that shape character. It's explaining how weaving in an ethical life affects the choices we make along the way. In the wisdom literature of the Bible, there's a recognition that it's not enough to just pass on information. Good advice isn't the end-all and be-all. That information has to be paired with timeless, godly character if it's to lead to the best outcomes. It's godly character that contextualizes the information in Proverbs. In times like these, I think perhaps the most important thing we can be doing is passing on character to our kids. In uncertain times with uncertain outcomes, it's the character that makes all the difference. We see this all over the Bible, by the way. What I'm saying here is not particularly profound. You see it early on with Moses and Joshua, when the torch is passed from one generation to another. It's not just that Moses teaches Joshua how to lead. Joshua's been learning that for years. It's the character that gets passed from one to the other. Joshua learns from all Moses' mistakes so he can be a successful leader where Moses failed. Or Elijah and Elisha, where Elisha asks for one thing before you go. Give me a double portion of your spirit. I want to be like you, but even more so. Change me from the person I was into the person I need to be to succeed in this prophetic role. Or Mordecai and Esther. I love this. A painting is particularly medieval, isn't it? But with Mordecai and Esther, she's thrust into a place that she never expected to go, didn't particularly want to be, and he teaches her not just what to do, she knows what she ought to do, but he has to instill in her the character to make the hard choices along the way, coming at great risks. It's courage that Mordecai passes on to Esther. Or with Paul and Timothy, where Paul's a bit of a hothead. He's taught Timothy, here's theology, here's who Jesus is, here's how we share this knowledge around the Roman Empire. But Timothy is timid. And so over and over again in these pastoral letters, he's teaching Timothy not what to teach. Timothy knows the what. It's how and to whom. It's the character to be both bold and also patient, to be loving and courageous. It's the character that has to be shaped as the torch is passed. And of course, nobody did this more patiently or better than Jesus with Peter. Someone who resisted Jesus at every turn, but Jesus would never give up on, because Peter had within himself what it was required to be the leader that God was calling him to be. And Jesus teaches him, and Peter just won't get it. And for a long time, I thought it was just the knowledge part Peter was missing, but it wasn't. It was the character change. His character and his goals had to become the same as Jesus so that the keys of the kingdom could be passed on. All through the Bible, when one generation passes the torch to the next, it's not enough to give the information, because information without context is toxic. When the torch is passed, in times like these, the most important thing that can be taught, I think, is character. On this Teacher Appreciation Sunday, I want to encourage you teachers to be in the business of creating character in your students. This is, of course, not just for teachers, for every parent in the room. Be in the business of crafting the character of your kids. When I was a youth minister, they used to ask in any interview we ever did, starting when I was like in college as an intern, what do you think is the greatest challenge facing today's generation? I don't know who wrote that in a blog post somewhere, but every interview committee copied it. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing today's generation? And And prior to about 2007, I had a set answer. And then it shifted in 2007. It never changed. Here's what I believe is the single biggest challenge facing every generation that is here and probably will ever come again. Unlimited access to information without context. We have unlimited access to infinite information without context. You can learn anything and everything for free. But kids don't have the context, the life experience, the broader understanding to know how to apply that knowledge. For teachers, your students literally do not need you to be able to learn anything. Parents too, by the way. Once they learn how to read and once you put an iPad in their hands, they don't need you anymore to learn things. They can learn anything from Googling it. They can have a back and forth conversation with ChatGPT. They can learn how to do anything on YouTube. It's incredible. But what they don't have is experience. They don't have character. They don't have wisdom yet. They need context. And I don't think this context is just historical or cultural or situational. I think the context they need is moral. What the information lacks is a person to show them how that information connects to the real world in ways that shape the experience they will have of themselves and of others. The information can tell students what to do, but it cannot tell them how to be. That's the job that we have as people in the lives of kids. Now, this is different from teachers I've known who believed their job was to lecture. I will never forget the first Bible class I went to that had these two men who we sat down, we were fourth graders, and we're like, what are these new teachers going to teach? And they said, you're all now young men, and we expect you to listen as we lecture. I don't remember a single thing they taught, but I remember that moment as they're all like, lame. And they lectured for a year while we were in that Bible class. There was a time when what teachers did was pass information from one person to the next. But by the time with lots of broadcasting technology came about and mass marketing and media, there was a shift there. The teachers then said it's no longer just about the information, it's about passion. How do I instill passion in my kids? How do I get them excited for the thing I'm teaching? I'm passionate about music appreciation. How do I get them passionate about it? I'm sorry, most of you failed when you tried that. Or it's history, or it's science, or it's spelling, whatever the thing is. How do I give them this passion? And those teachers were awesome. But that all happened in a culture largely that was still shared, or had this shared culture that was still rooted, at least sort of, in a common ethic, a common cultural ethic. It's no longer the case. And so today, kids can find all the information online, and they'll find influencers who will get them hyped up or passionate about whatever they happen to be into. I believe that your character will shape them more than the subject that you teach. I believe that your character as teachers will shape the kids in your classroom more than the subject that you teach them. It's kind of like starting a fire. I forgot how heavy that box was. Teaching kids today, it's kind of like starting a fire. The information is wood. You can't have a fire without wood. You're trying to shape a young life. You're trying to get them to behave in such a way. You're trying to put them on a path where who they are will create this experience that will be good and healthy and helpful for them. And so you take the fuel, you take the wood, the information, and you give it to them. That's not going to break. You give them the information they need. But information by itself is kind of useless. And so somehow you have to ignite, you have to inspire them to do something with it. That's the passion we talked about. And so you bring fuel. When you teach, you bring this hope that I can get them fired up the way I'm fired up. Because if I can give them the passion, if I can tap into the thing that drives them, then the information I give them will ignite, and then something will happen in their lives. It's really dangerous to do this on a stage, on a wood platform. I'm realizing that now. And so you teachers, you create this This situation where you're hoping that I can give you the information and I can instill in you the passion. And all you really need after that is just a spark. This doesn't have that flame anymore. This is way more intimidating. All you need is a spark. It is the fire of their life that will turn this from a pile of sticks and fuel into something that becomes something. I mean, this is all we need for a fire, right? I mean, if you really wanted to ramp it up, I could get some lighter fluid out here and spray it all over everything. We'd have a blaze. But at the end of the day, you just need fuel and you need the wood. Except that if I light this here, it catches the whole stage on fire. I could take these outside and I could throw them in the grass, and what we'd have in just a few minutes is a fire that rips through our property into the houses around us. I could take this exact same fuel, the sticks, the passion, the information. I could take it and I could light it on fire in a forest, and we could burn down the Osage Park. See, it's not just enough to have information or passion, is it? You have to have something that governs where the fire goes, where the fire, whether or not it's going to be destructive or helpful. This is why when you go to a campground, they always have a fire pit. They clearly say, here's where the fire goes. Here's where fire is allowed. As long as it's in here, you're going to be safe. But if it escapes out of here, it's going to be really bad for you and all your neighbors. This, I am convinced, is the work of teachers in the time that we live in. This is how you shape character. It is to say that yes, the information is here and it is helpful, and I hope I can instill passion within you, but you must know where this information goes and what the passion is meant to be pointed to so that your life does good, not harm. It is character that shapes what people do with the information they have. It's character that points passion in a way that helps people and not harms people. This is what Solomon is trying to say in the Proverbs that we read. It's great to have wealth, but not at the expense of the people around you. You can know how to make money and hurt people with it. Or you can understand justice. You have words that can do incredible good for people, or you can gossip and slander and hurt and tear down. It's the character that determines what you do with the words that come out of your mouth. Now, here's the challenge as a teacher. You hear this and you're like, hey, that sounds great. But isn't that the parent's job? And on the one hand, yes. Statistically speaking, scientifically speaking, the parents are always going to be number one and number two as the primary influencers in a kid's spiritual or ethical development. Yes, every research shows that, assuming the parents are around. If they're not, then, or even if they are, then grandma and grandpa become number two, or 3 and 4. But number 5, number 6, that's you. You have an outsized influence. You're like, yeah, but I also have 25 kids in my classroom. It's true. But you don't have to reach 25. You have to shape character in the one who is ready and waiting. My second grade teacher was named Miss Watson. She was a self-proclaimed hayhead. That's a very 80s teacher thing to say. She had great big shoulder pads, curly hair, put a hole in the ozone. She was goofy. She was silly. She was funny. And she let me tell jokes. She let me be silly. She let me be a little goofy. She let me not sit still all the time. And because of her, I found out that learning in a classroom could be fun. That it was okay to be a little goofy, to be a bit of a clown. I don't remember what I learned in second grade, but I remember her. And I remember the way that her character shaped the way that I thought about teaching. So when I do silly illustrations or tell silly jokes, it's because Miss Watson's up here teaching with me. In 9th grade, I had a teacher named Mr. Watkins, similar, but very different people. Mr. Watkins taught history and logic. It was at an interdenominational school. He was the only teacher there from the Church of Christ. It was like, ha, we have an ally. Let's go convert the rest of them. And he was like, chill, man. He taught logic. And he taught me how to think logically. He was a former lawyer. He taught me how to argue a point. How not to get wrapped up in the emotion of a thing, but instead to reason through. And the reason that I love apologetics and that I love to dig into the text and to uncover, here's what's going on in a logical flow, like the 5-frame storytelling thing we've been doing over the last several weeks, is because when I teach up here, Barry Watkins stands next to me. He shaped the way that I taught. Dr. Adair, Scott Adair at Harding University. At the time, he wasn't a doctor, he was a master, but he wouldn't let us call him Master Adair. For a year, as I was finishing up my senior year of college, I never even had him for a youth ministry class, but he would let me go in his office once a week for an hour, and we would just talk about the internship I was doing and trying to learn how to do youth ministry, because we learned all the stuff, but we'd never done it before, and I didn't want to screw these kids up. So he spent an hour a week for a year teaching me to do youth ministry. So when I research adolescent psychological development, when I care about how to counsel a kid, when I think about rites of passage and taking my kids on a trip when they're 12, the person sitting in the back seat is Dr. Adair. Those teachers did not have that same effect on every kid in that classroom. They just couldn't, but they don't have to. Paul converted a ton of people, but he had Silas, Barnabas, Titus, and Timothy. That's who he discipled. We do this for the 1 or the 2 or the 12 around us who need our presence. And by God's grace, it isn't just on you and it isn't just on me. Now, spoiler alert, some of you are like, why did I even come on Teacher Appreciation Sunday? I'm not a teacher, and I don't have kids in the house anymore. Praise the Lord. And the answer is, because we're a church of disciples making disciples. And disciple is a Greek word that translated just means student. You're a student of a rabbi. So when you disciple someone, you are then teaching a student to be like the rabbi, the master teacher. Discipleship, teaching, is not just something that people do in school buildings, nor is it something you have to have a title to be. If you are a Christian, this is everything that we are supposed to be doing. Discipling each other and discipling the world around us. We are all called to this. This is why it is so important that we have the same character of Christ. Because the world around us will know, if character really is the thing you can't get anywhere else except for other people, the way of Jesus either makes all the difference or none of it. And the way that the world will know is us. So may we be people who are deeply rooted in Christ. May we be people who see every moment as an opportunity to point people towards the character of Jesus, because it's our character too. And in an age of infinite information without context, may our morality, our ethics, our consistent living be the context that shows people here's where the good life is. This is the way not just of life, but of eternal life. And may people come to be more like Jesus, even if they haven't met him yet, because our character has been shown to the world around us. If we can love you or help you this morning, let us know. We're going to stand and sing together.
I'm in the way, the bright and shining way. I'm in